Hi, I'm following along with Paul McCorders Raspberry Pi PicoW lessons. We're on number 114, and we're talking about gathering data on the Pico and sending it to the PC over the Wi-Fi, or possibly sending information from the PC to the uh, Pico to do something with. We didn't have any homework this week, so I figured I'd look through Paul's lessons that he has posted, and it didn't look like he was going to do one, but I thought, well, we have a DHT temperature humidity sensor in our kits, and that might be something that you want to keep track of, remotely. So I thought I'd get into doing that and try putting that together. So here's my attempt at that. We'll start with the Pico code. Um, all the network stuff's the same as we've always done, so you can take a look at that if you want. But since we're using a DHT, we got to bring in the DHT library. 9 and 10 here sets up um, uh, the DHT object, and rest of it's just for the networking. Then we get down our while true. We're going to wait for our client to request data. We don't care what he requests. If he sends a request, we figure he's going to want the temperature sensor readings. So this is how you get the readings from the DHT sensor.measure. And those readings come through as sensor.temperature and sensor.humidity. And since I'm uh, doing Fahrenheit, I got to do the calculations to go from Celsius to Fahrenheit, which I'm doing here. The temperature is in a floating point, and I think I want to deal with mostly uh, integers, so I'm rounding it to an integer there. The humidity automatically comes in as a percentage whole number, so that's already done. And that's going into, this is creating a tuple called readings. And so we're uh, doing the thing where we string the tuple. So we end up with a stringified tuple as the message. And the message, we're encoding it and sending it over. Short and sweet, pretty nice there. Okay, so on the uh, client side, on the PC, I'm using the FreeSimpleGUI instead of the package that Paul used for the graphical interface. And we're doing socket there, and down here we're 2 lines is all we need to create our socket that we're doing. Um, I decided that I wanted to keep the readings. So we're going to have a list called readings, and it's going to be a list full of tuples. Each time we get a reading, we're going to append it. So we'll have a list of tuples there. So that's kind of cool. Um, like I said, we're going to call this client send function from our main loop on a periodic basis, and it's going to just send just as get that it doesn't matter what you put there. We're sending something over to the Pico, and the Pico is going to send back the tuple in um, string form that we're going to get here encoded. So the first thing we got to do is decode that. And then this eval thing will turn a string tuple back into a regular tuple, and we're just appending that to the readings list so that we are adding a tuple to the list. That's all we're going to do there. Since we're displaying uh, temperature and humidity on the same graph, we have uh, some range conversions to do on that. So I'm using a version of the slope formula that Paul taught us, and then that's what this line does. And then I'm constraining it to the min and max of our graph as well. So we'll be able to call this when we want to change our readings so that we can graph them in the right places on our graph. So that's what we got going on there. This next thing is, this is basically what I did to create the axis numbers for the temperature and the humidity on the graph. They're both Y versions, and I put lines on the graph that we can use to figure out where we're at, and also I put the axis numbers of for both temperature and humidity, and loop through all those. And also I put the different colors. Green is for the humidity, and red is for the um temperature. So we, that's this is what you got to do when your window uh, G is our graph. When we create our graph down here, I gave it the key of G. So when you want to do anything with an object, the graph object, you just do this Windows G, and everything has to do that. But basically, you're drawing a line in your graph, you're drawing text in your graph, and drawing some more text and more text. And yeah, do that every time, because we're going to update the graph every time that we get new data. So let's get down a little bit farther. So the layout, like I said, the thing about FreeSimpleGUI, the layout is really simple. The background colors of the theme here, I just picked dark green this time as a theme. And the layout is just a graph, and the sliders are one slider to tell you to pick how many points you're going to put on the graph, and then an exit button. That's all that is. And we're creating the window, and then this is where you have a timer that you can um, FreeSimpleGUI is event driven, so you can create this timer that'll fire an event in our event loop every so many milliseconds. And since our temperature things only like to be read every couple seconds, I just put every 2 seconds that we're getting temperature reading, sending off and trying to get temperature readings from our Pico. And I just draw divs is just calling this function. It'll draw all the stuff on it that you'll see in a little bit. And then we get down into our while true event loop. So our event loop is, like I said, it just keeps going. And this first line here is a blocking event. It's just waiting for event to happen. And when it happens, it'll return the event name and all the values that are associated with the whole window. And then, like I said, if you hit the exit button or the X in the corner, you're going to break out and you'll just fall out of the program. This is our, like I said, we're calling this timer event every 2 seconds. And the key on that is T1. So that's the event that's going to get thrown. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to go out and start a thread at the CS send. So that's going to go up there and go get some data from the Pico. And when it's done, it's going to append it to the list. So it's not returning anything, but it's going to send, when it's done, it's going to send this uh, end key so that it comes back, and we'll have another event happening when it finishes getting the data that it wants. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look for that event as well. So so if that's the event that comes through, then we're going to go about graphing our data. So we're creating a couple of uh, uh, data points, our x-axis. Maybe this is the best time to talk about that. Is in my past video, I started at the left side and plotted graphs, data one at a time, all the way across to the right side. And then I started, scrolling the graph. I thought about a different way of doing it, where the graph starts on the numbers starts getting plotted on the right hand side, and then every time it updates the graph, the numbers will shift. The graph plot will shift to the right. I mean to the left. So all your numbers will be there. The reason I did that is because I got that slider that can adjust how much data is on the screen, and I felt that that was needed to, when you scrunch in your data that you wanted to see it over there. So that's what you can comment whether you like it better than the other way or this way. I don't know which one's better so far, but just different. So like I said, our X increment is based on the number of points on the graph. So we're doing some floor division on that based on this N is the value of that slider. So if it's 10, it's going to divide this by 10 and be 120 is going to be how many pixels in it's going to move in X for each line that it's going to plot. Okay, this if statement here, you need two lines to plot, 2 points of data to plot a line. So if I only have 1 point of data, I'm going to drop through that. And once I get 2 points of data, then I can go ahead and have an X and a Y that we can use. So we're going to erase the window. We're saving some variables here, and then we're going to erase the window, and we're going to draw the divisions back on it. And then this is where we're going to plot our lines. And we're going to plot the lines from starting, like I say, we're starting on the right. So I'm using negative indexing down here to grab the individual tuples out of the list. And so a -1 is the last one. A -2 is going to be the second to last. So we're taking them from that and we're plotting them, and we're doing it that way. And like I said, we're either doing the list is either going to be it's either going to be the length of the list if it doesn't fill the screen, or if we have like 10 values here and but we have 20 values in our list, we're taking the minimum of it. So we're only going, if we're saying we're plotting 10, it's going to be the last 10 of that's in our list. But then, like I say, you can move the slider and it'll update, the amount that you have there. So that's a good thing there. Um, then, like I said, we're pulling the readings out of our list. And because our Y is based on the temperature scale on the graph, when to get the other range 0 to 100 instead of -30 to 120, we have to do the range mapping so that we can do that. And so we're taking our Y data and mapping it to the new range so that it plots, the Y plots in the right place on the graph. This line here is uh, taking care of the um, fact that you need the two lines, you need two points to graph. So it's going to do that. And then we're updating, like you say, we have the the X, the Y temp, and the YRH is our values that we are getting. And then we're going to um, put those numbers into the last values so that we can have, you need, like I say, you need two values to draw your lines. So you're not going to draw a line until you have two values. That's basically what's going on. And then our X has to increment, and because we're working from right to left, it's a negative increment. And so we're minusing the increment off of that. So that's the way that works. And the best thing to do, I guess, is to plot our data. So let's get that going so I think let me check and see if the server is still running. I think it's still running, so let's try this. Make myself smaller here. There's our data. Like I say, it has to wait until it gets 2 points of data. So this is really interesting data. It's a straight line. Of course, I'm sitting here in a climate controlled house, so things aren't changing much. You just saw the humidity go down a little bit. I can make the humidity go up by breathing on it. So it's shot up. Temperature doesn't seem to react quite as well as the humidity does. So anyhow, that's what you got. And as we get some more things, so if I move this over to 20 or 30, you can see that it still updates and but there's 30 points of data on there. If I go way up here, your data is right there. You can see it's going to still increment, but you can see a more compact version of the data. And but like I said, the temp thing doesn't want to get read too many times, so we don't. It's hard to get a view of what we can actually do with this. So I'm going to exit out of here and go back over to Thorny. And I actually have one instead of something, I have a fake thing that's going to do that. And so instead of taking the temperature measurements, I'm doing some random numbers. It's going to either be plus or minus whatever the past number was here, and on the relative humidity or that. So, and it's going to change quite a bit, and we can speed up getting the data as well. So, I have to stop the old one, and we're going to start up the fake data one that we have. All right. Looks like it's fired up, so we can go back over to the client side on Visual Code Studio, and we can run this. Oh my, you don't want to see me that big. So now the data is coming through a lot faster. Oh, I didn't change it. That's what I didn't do. Let's close that. Get me out of here. All right. So what it was is I was getting data every 2 seconds, but we can, now that we're not reading our thing, we can go like every 200 milliseconds. And let's try it again. There we go. Now we got data coming, and like I said, it's just doing that random thing. It's not moving a whole lot. But like I said, we're getting it 10 times faster. So now if we go, we can see that's it. I don't know what is that, 50? So we can, now we're at 140 points plotted on the graph, and we can see it. I don't think I mentioned that. Yeah, this is all that draw divs thing we did. We're drawing these lines, and we're drawing a line on this side and a line on this side just to make it look okay. And then we got our degrees are, like I say, top is 120 and working evenly down to -30. And our humidity goes from 100% to 0%. So, like I said, I got this so that it won't go below that, even though the numbers, like I say, these are fake numbers, but just doing it, and um, that's why I put it on the Pico so it didn't go out of bounds on our graphs. So we can probably go ahead and move it up some more. I don't know why the graph, I think it might be that floor division, why it won't go all the way to the end sometimes, because See, sometimes it does. Now, see, we're at 200 and doing that, but it seems like the even numbers, it goes all the way. So I guess it all depends on how the division works out there or something. But if we go too far, you can see that, well, it's still disappearing there. So that's really weird. So I must already have more than 600 points that we've plotted on this list. Our list is growing. So we're seeing the whole thing. But like I said, as I go back on this, it's only going to be a portion of this side of the data is going to be saved. So there it goes. Back to 10. So now you just see the graph moving a lot better. So I don't have it down perfectly, but it interesting how that works out for us. But I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of this. So like I said, it's you know, the draw divs was like 12 lines of code, and so the working with the graphs and getting them to look good, hey, that's takes some coding to do. Um, I was looking at the documentation on this FreeSimpleGUI, and it'll also interact with matplotlib graphs, and um, they have samples, and I've ran some sample code just, and you have to import the matplotlib, and then there's a backend matplotlib library so that it interacts with other things. And it I just like doing things on my own, but the with the matplotlib you get all the axis plots and everything, and if you tell it to put it one line of code, it'll tell you to plot the grid or whatever. Um, One thing I noticed is that it's an auto formatting grid, so you don't get to choose what the grid numbers are, and they're based on the top and bottom of the graph. So um, if if it's going flat across like ours was, your graph thing are gonna your legend or your axis is gonna be really fine. But then if you have a big group and big difference in your numbers, and your axis is going to change. I kind of like doing it myself, so I have control over that. If I looked into matplotlib, I think I could probably do the same thing with that. But anyhow, I might play with that, and you might see another video this week from me trying it with matplotlib. uh, Pretty busy on the farm right now, but had a little bit of free time this afternoon, so I figured I'd try getting a video out. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Thanks, Paul, for all you do. Have a great day, everybody.